Hi guys, it's your girl Tamika L here, back with another domestic violence education and awareness video. And today I want to talk about the definition of domestic violence. I feel as though, many of us have our own idea or definition of what domestic violence really is. But I just wanted to take some time to just kind of break it down. So first, I want you to understand this. Domestic violence is a system of abusive behaviors. I'm gonna run that back. Domestic violence is a system of abusive behaviors. Now, oftentimes where our definition starts and ends is with physical abuse, because those are the bruises that we can see. We can see black eyes, we can see scratches, we can see bruising that may look like hands around the neck or something to that factor. We know if someone has been seriously injured because, again, we can see it. But physical abuse is not oftentimes how domestic violence starts. This is something I learned quite a few years ago, and I wanted to make sure that I shared that with you during this video, and that is violence does not begin with the fist, it begins with the mouth. I know, one more time. Violence begins not with the fist, but with the mouth. So by the time you see a victim being physically abused, they have already endured months, maybe even years, sometimes decades of emotional and verbal abuse. And so let's start there. Emotional abuse can be defined as that which you speak. So that's constant belittling. That is put downs. That is, something that my abuser would do to me all the time is say, "You're too fat. I don't like the way that you do your hair." Even though I was working out 3 days a week, he was in the same class with me. And, I was going to the hair salon. I had a great hairstylist at the time in South Carolina. So I was keeping myself up, but it was never enough for him. And so whenever we got into an argument or a spat, that would come up all the time. "You're too fat. You're too stupid. Nobody's ever going to listen to you. You don't know how to properly manage your money." All of those things. So those are just some samples of verbal and emotional abuse. But the emotional abuse comes in with that belittling. Then what happens if someone is constantly talking down to you or constantly making you feel less than, or the environment is already toxic and unhealthy? What's happening is that you start to retreat. And you start to, if you can imagine, like psychologically pull away from the person that you are. So you don't speak up. You do tend to go within. You don't say anything, even though something may make you uncomfortable, because emotionally you are so beat down that you physically do not have the strength to be able to endure. So again, by the time we see physical bruises on anyone, think about the years of emotional, verbal abuse that's already happened. A lot of times the victim has already been isolated from their friends and their family, because not only do they not want to be around the abuser, but sometimes they don't even want to be around the victim, because the victim is always going to side with the abuser. So you'll see that, and then you'll slowly see them start no longer want to attend family functions and hang out with the girls, in my case, or go out or do anything that's going to be beneficial to them. Or you'll see them slowly start to pull away from the activities that they once enjoyed. And so just again, by the time it gets to physical, that's 3 different types of abuse that could have already occurred in the relationship. But in addition to those that I have previously mentioned, there's also financial abuse, which is where maybe he's giving her an allowance because he doesn't trust her to pay the bills. Maybe she's not aware of what's going on in the household financially. Maybe he has already destroyed her credit, getting her to get all kinds of credit cards and loans in her name and all of those things. So financially, she's being abused. She's not aware of her money. She doesn't have any money. She doesn't have access to any money. She doesn't have access to anything going on in the household financially. And so, but you couple that with some of the other situations that's happening. Now, I'm not saying that your husband or wife has given you an allowance because you don't know how to manage your money. Well, that's not what this is, but you factor financial abuse with emotional, with verbal, with isolation, and with physical. If it had gotten to that point, that's the difference with financial abuse, and that's how you're able to identify. I don't want y'all going back home talking about, I was watching this video on the Unbeatable Domestic Violence Podcast YouTube channel, and this lady, Tamika, said that you're financially abusing me. No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. So in addition to that, there's also spiritual abuse can come into play. For those of you that may have grown up in the deep South like me, you know, with your mamas, your grandmas, your aunties, they would tell you, hey, if you want to find a good man, find him in the church, or find them in whatever the household of faith is for your particular religion. But what happens is you go there and you find them in the church, but a chameleon can only hide his true skin for so long. And I always say a leopard can only hide his spots for so long, right? Until the true person actually comes out. So being covered in the cloth, so to speak, being behind the sacred desk, if they are a pastor or a preacher, or sitting in the pews, serving in an office in the church, if the person is not any different, it does not matter. But the danger with religious and spiritual abuse is that they oftentimes will use the holy teachings of the religion to keep a victim bound in the relationship. So if you're a Christian, it is, go home and pray about it. Don't let the devil get into your, marriage, your relationship. God has something great for you, so it's that kind of a language. Same, I would imagine, for those of the Jewish faith or the Islam faith, there's some sort of sacred teaching that could be utilized to keep you subservient in a relationship. So you guys will have to comment and tell me below what that would be. So we have those different forms of abuse that can be happening in a relationship at any given moment. And so that just takes me back to my original thought that domestic violence is a system of abusive behaviors. And so everything has to be factored in that situation. But again, if your relationship is not healthy, if it's toxic, if you're unable to communicate your feelings, if you are unable to say when something makes you uncomfortable, that could be a sign. I'm not saying that it is a sign. I'm saying that could be a sign that something greater is going on. And so again, as the person in the relationship, man or woman, make sure that you are protecting yourself. Make sure that you are checking in with yourself. Trust your gut. That was something that I failed to do a lot, is I did not trust my gut. I didn't trust my instincts. I didn't trust what my body was starting to really show me whenever I would come around my abuser. So keep those definitions in mind. Sometimes you may also see domestic violence referred to as intimate partner violence, because a lot of times this is happening under the context of love. I love you, that's why I hit you. I love you, that's why I talk down to you. I love you, that's why I keep you from your friends and your family, and I want you all to myself. So because it's often done in the auspices of love, it is confusing, and many victims don't realize that they're in an abusive relationship until sometimes it's too late. So again, domestic violence is a system of abusive behaviors. Domestic violence can also be known as intimate partner violence, because it is violence that is most often happening in the home. All right, you guys, stay tuned for the next video on domestic violence. We'll talk about red flags, and we're going to talk about some warning signs, and we're going to cover a lot of topics on this subject. So stay connected. Make sure you not only subscribe, thank you to my subscribers, but also make sure that you're clicking on that notification